My name is Amanda, 32 years old, and I never thought I'd be the kind of daughter who would sell her parents' house from under them. For 6 years, I paid their bills, supported their lifestyle, and believed they were grateful. Until last month when Dad forgot to hang up the phone after our call. She's a burden, a disappointment. She should have. Those words shattered everything. If you're watching this, drop a comment letting me know if you've ever discovered someone's true feelings about you by accident. Don't forget to subscribe for more stories about family betrayal. I grew up in Mapleton, a small town in the Midwest where everyone knew each other. My parents, Thomas and Linda, owned the local hardware store that had been in our family for generations. It wasn't fancy, but it provided a comfortable life for us. Dad was the friendly face behind the counter, while Mom handled the books and inventory. They worked hard and took pride in serving the community. From an early age, I was the responsible one. I got good grades, helped around the store after school, and never caused trouble. My parents often introduced me as their pride and joy, especially when I won academic competitions or volunteered at community events. Amanda's going places, Dad would tell customers with a wink. My brother Jake was different. 3 years older than me, he was charming but chronically irresponsible. He dropped out of community college after one semester, borrowed money he never repaid, and cycled through jobs every few months. Despite this, my parents always made excuses for him. Jake's just finding his path, Mom would say after he quit another job without notice. He's creative, not meant for conventional work. Dad would defend when Jake borrowed more money to fund another doomed business idea. I never understood why they were so patient with his mistakes while expecting perfection from me. Still, I focused on my goals. Since middle school, I dreamed of becoming an architect. I spent hours drawing building designs and creating miniature models from cardboard and glue. My bedroom walls were covered with sketches and magazine clippings of innovative structures. Senior year of high school, my hard work paid off when I received a substantial scholarship to study architecture at a prestigious university in Chicago. It wasn't a full ride, but it covered enough that with student loans and part-time work I could manage. My parents seemed proud at my graduation party, but I caught glimpses of sadness too. "It's just so far away," Mom said while helping me pack. "The store won't be the same without you popping in after school." "Chicago's a big city, Amanda," Dad warned. "People aren't like they are here." I assured them I'd be fine and promised to visit during breaks. Secretly, I was thrilled to be leaving Mapleton. I loved my family, but I wanted more than our small town could offer. College was everything I'd hoped for, and more challenging than I'd imagined. I juggled classes with working at the campus coffee shop and weekend shifts at a local bookstore. There was never enough money or time, but I was happy. My professors praised my designs, and for the first time I was surrounded by people who shared my passion for architecture. During sophomore year, I met Zoe in a structural engineering class. We bonded over late-night study sessions and shared dreams of designing sustainable buildings. She became the sister I never had, understanding me in ways my family never did. "You're too hard on yourself," she'd tell me when I was stressing over projects. "Your work is brilliant. Own it." With Zoe's encouragement, I applied for a competitive internship at Braddock and Associates, one of Chicago's top architecture firms. Against all odds, I got it. The internship meant working 20 hours a week on top of classes and my other jobs, but it was worth every exhausting minute. I was learning from industry leaders and building connections that would shape my career. By senior year, everything was falling into place. I was graduating with honors, had glowing references from my internship supervisors, and had been offered a full-time position at Braddock starting after graduation. The salary was generous enough that I could finally stop working multiple jobs and focus entirely on architecture. I was ready to start paying off my student loans and building the life I'd worked so hard to create. Then came the call that changed everything. It was 2 months before graduation. I was in the studio late finalizing my thesis project when Mom called. Her voice sounded strange, tight, with suppressed emotion. "Amanda, we need to talk to you about something important," she said. "Is this a good time?" I put her on speaker as I continued adjusting measurements on my blueprint. "I'm working on my thesis, but go ahead." "Your father's here too," she said. I heard shuffling as they put their phone on speaker as well. Dad cleared his throat. "Honey, there's no easy way to say this. The store's in trouble. Big trouble." I stopped working and gave them my full attention. What kind of trouble? We're facing bankruptcy, he said, his voice cracking. Sales have been down for years, but we thought we could turn things around. Then your mother's condition worsened and the medical bills started piling up. This was the first I'd heard of any serious health condition. What condition, Mom? Are you okay? It's my heart, she explained vaguely. Nothing immediately life-threatening, but I need ongoing treatment. The insurance doesn't cover most of it. Why didn't you tell me sooner? I asked, my mind racing. There was an uncomfortable pause before Dad continued. We didn't want to worry you during school. We thought we could handle it, but then what? Your brother needed help, Mom interjected. He had some financial difficulties and took out loans using the store and house as collateral. When he couldn't pay, Jake put the house up as collateral. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. How could you let him do that? He said it was temporary. Dad defended weakly. A business opportunity that would pay off quickly. But it didn't, and now he's gone. Gone? What do you mean, gone? We haven't heard from him in 3 months, Mom admitted. He left when the loan company started calling, changed his number, deleted his social media. The bank is threatening foreclosure on both the store and the house. I sat in stunned silence, trying to process what they were telling me. My parents were about to lose everything, and my brother had apparently skipped town after contributing to the disaster. How much do you need? I finally asked. Dad named a figure that made my stomach drop. It was more than I'd make in my first year at Braddock, even with the generous starting salary. We're not asking you to solve this, Mom added quickly. We just wanted you to know what's happening. We'll figure something out. But her voice held no conviction, and I knew there was no solution they hadn't already considered. That night I couldn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling of my tiny apartment, weighing options that all seemed impossible. By morning, I'd made the hardest decision of my life. I called Braddock and Associates and declined their job offer, explaining I had a family emergency. Then I called my parents. I'm coming home after graduation, I told them. We'll figure this out together. Their relief was palpable, and at the time I thought their gratitude was genuine. You've always been our rock, Amanda, Dad said, his voice thick with emotion. We don't deserve you, Mom added. I believed them. That was my first mistake. The day I moved back home was surreal. After years in Chicago's bustling environment, Mapleton felt unnervingly quiet. My parents greeted me with tearful hugs in the driveway of the house I'd grown up, in the house that might soon belong to the bank. I can't believe you're really here, Mom said, holding me tight. You're our angel. Dad carried my suitcases up to my old bedroom, which looked exactly as I'd left it years ago. Architecture posters still on the walls, high school trophies gathering dust on shelves. It felt like a museum to a previous life. Nothing's changed, I said, running my finger along my old drafting desk. We always knew you'd be back, Dad replied. I thought he meant for visits not like this. That first week was a deep dive into financial horror. I spread documents across the dining room table. Bank statements, medical bills, loan agreements, tax forms. The situation was worse than they'd described. The store had been operating at a loss for years. Mom's medical condition required expensive treatments twice monthly. And Jake had taken out multiple loans, forging signatures when necessary. How could this happen? I asked, holding up a loan document with an interest rate that bordered on criminal. Didn't you read these before signing? Mom looked away. Jake said it was just temporary. He was so sure this business venture would work out. What business venture? Some kind of tech startup. Dad waved his hand vaguely. He explained it, but you know how these modern things are. I bit back my frustration. Jake had likely known they wouldn't understand the details, making it easier to manipulate them. Within 2 weeks, I had a job at Westridge Construction, a local company that designed and built modest homes. The salary was less than half what Braddock had offered, but it was steady income. I negotiated a flexible schedule so I could manage my parents' finances and gradually sell off the store's inventory at discounted prices to generate immediate cash. I created a strict budget for household expenses, opened joint accounts where I could monitor spending, and established payment plans with the most pressing creditors. Mom and Dad initially protested my control over their finances. We're the parents, Dad complained when I took his credit cards. This doesn't feel right. Do you want to keep the house? I asked bluntly. Because this is what it takes. They reluctantly agreed, and I thought their capitulation showed understanding of the gravity of our situation. I would later learn it was merely tactical retreat. As months passed, I settled into a grueling routine. Weekdays at Westridge evenings negotiating with creditors, or working on the store's liquidation weekends, taking odd design jobs for local businesses, wanting storefronts refreshed, or homes remodeled. Every spare dollar went toward debt reduction. I handled my own student loan payments separately, never adding that burden to the family finances. I had planned to get my own apartment in town, something small but private. I found a studio above the old bookstore that would have been perfect. But when I mentioned moving out, Mom had what appeared to be a panic attack. "You can't leave us now," she gasped between breaths. "What if something happens?" Dad looked equally alarmed. "Your mother needs you nearby Amanda. What if she has an episode in the night?" I put the apartment plans on hold. Just until things stabilize, I told myself. But temporary became permanent, and I remained in my childhood bedroom, a 30-year-old architect with an unused degree designing garages and home additions, when I'd once dreamed of skyscrapers. Every month we sat together at the dining table for what I called our financial review. I showed them progress on debt reduction, explained which accounts had been paid, and outlined the next month's priorities. They nodded along, expressing appropriate gratitude. "I don't know what we'd do without you, sweetheart," Mom would say, patting my hand. "You've saved this family," Dad would affirm. After these meetings, I'd retreat to my room and exchange texts with Zoe, who had taken the job I declined at Braddock. Her career was flourishing while mine stagnated. She never said it outright, but I could sense her growing impatience with my situation. "You can't set yourself on fire to keep them warm forever," she wrote after I canceled yet another visit to Chicago. "It's been 2 years already. Just until the medical bills are under control," I replied, though we both knew the goal line kept moving. Dating became an impossibility. I briefly saw a teacher from the local high school, but between work and family obligations, I couldn't sustain even that modest relationship. When he suggested weekend trips or late dinners, I always had an excuse ready. Eventually, he stopped asking. At night, I would sometimes work on small architectural projects, designing theoretical buildings for competitions, or creating detailed plans for my dream home. I converted the attic into a makeshift studio, where I could pretend for a few hours at a time that I was still pursuing my passion. I applied for remote positions with architecture firms, but without recent professional experience, rejection letters accumulated. Years passed. 1, then 2, then 5. The store was sold debt slowly paid down. I received a small promotion at Westridge managing residential projects rather than just drafting plans. Mom's health reached a maintenance phase, requiring fewer expensive treatments. The cloud of imminent financial ruin lifted, but I remained trapped in the life I'd built to save them. In rare moments of honesty, I admitted to myself that I stayed partly from habit. I had constructed my identity around being the reliable daughter, the savior of the family. Who would I be if I stepped away from that role? The thought terrified me almost as much as starting over at 32. Then in my 6th year back in Mapleton, I saw a job posting that made my heart race. Ashton Partners, a mid-sized architecture firm in Riverside just 45 minutes away, was seeking a project coordinator with construction experience. It was perfect, bridging my years at Westridge with my architectural training. I updated my portfolio through the night and submitted my application the next morning. 2 weeks later, I sat across from Helen Ashton, the firm's founder, showing her my designs and explaining how my unique path had prepared me for this position. "Honestly," she said, reviewing my portfolio, "I'm impressed by the practicality in your designs. Most architects fresh from university lack real-world construction knowledge. You have both." By the end of the interview, she offered me the position with a salary that exceeded what I'd been making at Westridge by $15,000. I accepted on the spot, my mind already racing ahead to apartment hunting in Riverside. Driving home, I was euphoric. For the first time in years, I felt like myself again, the self I was meant to be. I couldn't wait to tell my parents. They would be happy for me, surely. The worst financial troubles were behind us. Mom was stable. They could manage the remaining bills with their retirement savings and the small income Dad earned doing bookkeeping for local businesses. I called them from the car, too excited to wait until I got home. Mom, Dad, I have amazing news, I announced when they picked up. I got a job at an architecture firm in Riverside. There was a pause before Dad responded, his tone oddly flat. Architecture? I thought you'd given up on that. No, I just put it on hold. This is perfect timing. Most of your debts are paid off, and the new salary is great. I'll still help with Mom's medical bills, of course. Riverside is so far away, Mom said quietly. Almost an hour. It's 45 minutes, I corrected. I could come home weekends if needed, but honestly, it makes sense for me to get an apartment there. An apartment? Dad sounded alarmed. That's an unnecessary expense. You have a perfectly good room here. I gripped the steering wheel tighter. I'm 32, Dad. It's time for me to have my own place. After everything we've been through as a family. Mom's voice took on a wounded quality. I thought we agreed to stick together. We did through the crisis. But things are better now, and this is a great opportunity for me. I've put my career on hold for 6 years. So now we're just a burden you can't wait to be rid of, Dad said coldly. That's not what I said. I pulled into a gas station, too agitated to drive safely. Look, we can talk more when I get home. I just wanted to share my good news. Fine, Dad said. See you soon. The call ended, or so I thought. I sat in the parked car trying to calm down when I realized I could still hear voices. Dad must have failed to disconnect properly. I was about to hang up when I heard my name. Amanda's always been like this. Dad was saying, his voice clearer now. Selfish when it really counts. I know, Mom agreed. She's a burden, a disappointment. She should have been more like Jake. I froze, phone still pressed to my ear. At least Jake lives his life on his terms, Dad continued. He doesn't lord it over us how much he helps, constantly controlling our every expense. Remember how she nagged about the new TV, Mom said, acting like we were criminals for wanting one nice thing. We never should have added her to the house deed, Dad grumbled. Big mistake. Now she acts like she owns the place. She's going to make a fuss about this job, Mom predicted. We need to figure out how to keep her paying the bills while we visit Jake next month. Jake, I whispered, my world tilting sideways. I still don't understand why she never took that Chicago job, Dad said. We would have managed somehow, and she wouldn't be stuck here making everyone miserable with her martyrdom. Well, she believed we needed her, Mom replied with a laugh I didn't recognize. That was convenient. Should I call Jake and tell him she might be moving closer to him? Dad asked. No, they still don't get along. Remember what happened at Christmas 3 years ago? Christmas 3 years ago, I hadn't seen Jake in over 6 years. They'd told me they hadn't either. True. Well, we'll figure something out. We always do. There was more, but I couldn't bear to listen. With shaking hands, I finally ended the call. Then I sat in the gas station parking lot watching afternoon turn to evening, trying to process the complete collapse of everything I thought I knew about my family. I don't remember driving back to the hotel. One moment I was sitting in that gas station parking lot, and the next I was checking into a Holiday Inn 10 miles from home. I couldn't face my parents, couldn't pretend I hadn't heard their true feelings. In the anonymous hotel room, I finally broke down. 6 years of sacrifice, of putting everyone else first, of believing I was appreciated, all built on lies. I sobbed until my throat was raw, and my eyes swollen curled in a ball on the stiff hotel comforter. The worst part wasn't just their ingratitude. It was learning they'd been in touch with Jake all along. Jake, who had created this financial disaster and disappeared. Jake, who they apparently saw regularly enough to plan visits. Jake, who was the preferred child despite everything. My phone buzzed repeatedly with texts and calls from my parents, but I couldn't bring myself to answer. What would I say? How do you confront people with their own secretly expressed contempt? I called in sick to work the next morning for the first time in years. Then I texted Zoe, "Can we talk?" "It's important," she called immediately. "What's wrong? You never take sick days." "They've been lying to me, Zoe. All of them. For years." My voice cracked. "Where are you? I'm coming." 3 hours later, Zoe arrived at the hotel having driven straight from Chicago. One look at her face, concerned but not surprised, told me she had suspected something like this all along. We sat in the hotel room as I played the recorded portion of the call. I'd had the presence of mind to start recording once I realized what I was hearing. Zoe's expression changed from concern to fury as my parents' voices filled the room. Those ungrateful, manipulative... She cut herself off, taking a deep breath. I knew something wasn't right, but this is worse than I imagined. What do? I asked, feeling lost in a way I never had before. You take that job in Riverside, she said firmly, and you never give them another dime. But Mom's medical condition is stable by your own account. And after hearing this, I wonder if it's even as serious as they claimed. I hadn't considered that possibility, but now doubts flooded in. How much else had they exaggerated or fabricated to keep me supporting them? Stay with me tonight, Zoe offered. Tomorrow we'll get your essential things from the house. I need to talk to them first, I said. I need to hear them try to explain. Zoe looked skeptical but didn't argue. She stayed at the hotel while I drove home the next morning rehearsing what I would say. My parents were in the kitchen when I arrived, both looking concerned, but not distraught, considering I hadn't come home or answered their calls. Amanda, Mom exclaimed. Where have you been? We were worried sick. Were you? I asked, my voice flat. They exchanged glances. Of course we were, Dad said. You didn't come home after your interview. You didn't answer our calls. I needed time to think, I said carefully, about what I heard after our call yesterday. A flash of something alarm guilt crossed Dad's face, but he recovered quickly. What do you mean? You didn't hang up properly, I explained. I heard your conversation about me being a burden and a disappointment, about how I should be more like Jake, who you're apparently still in regular contact with. Mom's hand flew to her mouth. Dad's face flushed, but he switched immediately to denial. You must have misunderstood, he insisted. We would never say such things. I recorded it, I said, though I didn't offer to play it. Every word. Well, we were upset about you moving away so suddenly, Mom said, changing tactics. People say things they don't mean when they're emotional. You meant it, I countered. And it wasn't sudden. I've been supporting this family for 6 years. 6 years of putting my dreams on hold. 6 years of believing you were grateful. We are grateful, Dad protested. Look at everything we've done for you. The audacity of his statement left me speechless momentarily. What you've done for me, I gave up a career in Chicago to save you from bankruptcy. I've paid every bill in this house for years. I've managed Mom's medical care. What exactly have you done for me? We gave you a place to live, Mom said, as if offering my childhood bedroom was some grand gesture. We're your parents, Dad added. We raised you. And then you used me, I responded. You lied about Jake being gone. You made me feel guilty for wanting anything for myself. You took and took while secretly resenting me for giving. You're being dramatic, Dad dismissed. You're obviously stressed about this new job. Maybe you're working too hard. This is exactly what Jake warned us about, Mom said, apparently forgetting their claim of no contact with him. He said you had control issues. Their gaslighting attempts might have worked before, but now I saw through them completely. They would never acknowledge what they'd done, never truly apologize, never change. I'm going to stay with Zoe for a few days, I said, turning to leave. I need space to think. Don't be ridiculous, Dad called after me. You can't just abandon us because of a misunderstanding. Watch me, I whispered to myself as I walked out the door. Back at the hotel, Zoe hugged me as I related the conversation. Classic Darvo, she said. Deny, attack, reverse victim and offender. They're trying to make you the villain. It worked for years, I admitted. I always felt guilty for wanting anything for myself. That evening, while my parents thought I was with Zoe, I returned to the empty house and began researching. In Dad's desk, I found bank statements they'd hidden from me, showing a savings account with a substantial balance. In Mom's email, which she'd left logged in on the family computer, I discovered years of correspondence with Jake, including photos of them visiting him in Colorado, where he apparently ran a successful landscaping business. Most shocking was an email from Mom's doctor that referred to her condition as well managed and suggested reducing appointments to quarterly checkups. They had maintained the twice-monthly appointments, which I paid for, apparently to keep me believing the situation was more serious than it was. I photographed everything, feeling sick but vindicated. The manipulation went deeper than I'd imagined. My entire adult life had been shaped by their lies. The next morning, I met with Sarah Winters, a financial advisor Zoe had recommended. I brought copies of all household bills, I'd paid loan documents, and the records of my contributions to my parents' finances over the years. "This is quite extensive," Sarah said, reviewing the documents. "You've essentially been the sole support for this household." "I thought I was helping them through a crisis," I explained, "but I'm starting to think the crisis was manufactured at least in part." Sarah nodded sympathetically. "Unfortunately, financial manipulation within families is common. Let's look at your current obligations and options." We discussed my financial entanglements with my parents. The most significant revelation came when Sarah examined the house deed. "You're listed as a joint owner," she confirmed. "Added 6 years ago. Did you know this?" I hadn't. My parents had asked me to sign some papers related to refinancing the mortgage when I first moved back, but they hadn't explained I was being added to the deed. What does that mean legally? It means you own the house equally with your parents. If you wanted to, you could force a sale and claim your portion of the proceeds. The idea was shocking, but also empowering. For the first time, I realized I had leverage. My next stop was a lawyer's office. Martin Goldman specialized in family property disputes and had agreed to see me on short notice. "Based on the deed and your documented financial contributions," he explained after reviewing my situation, "you have every legal right to sell the house. Given that you've paid all expenses for 6 years, you could likely claim more than a third of the proceeds, but that would require a court battle your parents might contest." "I don't want to fight them in court," I said. "I just want what's fair." "Then a straightforward property sale is your cleanest option. As a joint owner, you can initiate this without their cooperation, though it's messier that way. The proceeds would be divided according to ownership percentages." He advised me on next steps and potential complications. By the time I left his office, I had a clear plan. That afternoon, I called Helen Ashton and formally accepted the position at her architecture firm, confirming I could start in 2 weeks. Then I called a real estate agent who had been recommended by Martin. Jenna Phillips was professional and discreet. She came to evaluate the house the next day while my parents were at their weekly bridge game. "The market in this area is surprisingly strong," she noted, walking through the renovated living room I had redesigned 2 years earlier. "And the improvements you've made have significantly increased the property value. How quickly could it sell? With the right pricing, we could have offers within a week, possibly faster if we highlight the recent renovations." I nodded, a plan solidifying in my mind. "Let's do it. How soon can you list it?" The next few days were a careful dance. I returned home pretending I was still considering what to do about the job offer. My parents walked on eggshells around me, obviously afraid I might bring up what I'd overheard. I maintained the pretense all while methodically preparing for my departure. I opened new bank accounts at a different bank and transferred my savings. I changed passwords on all my personal accounts. I began subtly gathering important documents and sentimental items, storing them at Zoe's hotel. At night, I created a detailed financial statement of every dollar I had contributed to the household over 6 years. The total was staggering. Even accounting for what would have been reasonable rent and shared expenses, I had given them over $150,000 beyond my fair share. The house listing went live on Tuesday. By Thursday, we had 3 offers, all above asking price. The highest came from a young doctor moving to town to join the local hospital. She could close quickly and offered a 30-day rent-back period that would give my parents time to find new housing. I accepted her offer without telling my parents. The paperwork was processed electronically, with Jenna tactfully handling communications, so my parents remained unaware. The timing worked out perfectly. My parents had mentioned plans to visit my aunt in Nebraska the following weekend. From their emails to Jake, I knew this was actually a cover for their monthly trip to see him in Colorado. They would be gone for 3 days, enough time for me to move out completely and finalize the sale paperwork. As the closing date approached, I packed my remaining belongings when my parents weren't home. I secured an apartment in Riverside, signing the lease and paying the deposit online. Zoe helped me arrange movers for the larger furniture pieces I had purchased over the years. The hardest part was writing the letter I would leave for them. I spent evenings at the hotel drafting and redrafting, trying to find the right balance between explanation and accusation. Finally, I produced a 5-page document that laid out everything: the recorded conversation, the financial records, the evidence of their ongoing relationship with Jake and the house sale. I explained their portion of the proceeds, which was still substantial despite everything, and included contact information for my lawyer, who would handle any further communications. I specified that I would continue to help with legitimate medical expenses if documentation was provided directly from doctors, but all other financial support was ending. The last paragraph was the hardest to write. For 6 years, I believed I was helping the parents who loved me through a genuine crisis. I now understand that the crisis was partly manufactured, and that my support was taken for granted, and even resented. I cannot continue in a relationship built on such fundamental dishonesty. I wish you well with Jake, who you clearly prefer, despite his role in creating the financial problems that derailed my life. Perhaps now that I'm gone, you can be honest with each other, if not with me. I sealed the letter in an envelope along with the spare house keys, and arranged for the neighbor, Mrs. Carlson, to deliver it the day my parents were due to return from their trip. The day before their departure, we had a normal family dinner. They mentioned their upcoming visit to Aunt Susan, and I nodded as if I believed them. "Will you be okay alone for the weekend?" Mom asked with performative concern. "I'll be fine," I assured her, thinking of the apartment keys already in my pocket. "I have some work to catch up on anyway." "We'll call when we get there," Dad promised. "Take your time," I said. "Enjoy your visit." As I helped clean up after dinner, I took a last look around the kitchen where I'd spent countless hours. Despite everything, some part of me mourned the loss of the family I thought I had, but the truth had freed me even as it hurt. The next morning, I hugged my parents goodbye as they loaded their suitcases into the car, maintaining the charade until the very end. "See you Sunday evening," Mom said, kissing my cheek. "Drive safely," I replied, knowing I would be gone long before they returned. I stood in the driveway watching until their car disappeared around the corner. Then I pulled out my phone and texted the movers. "They're gone. You can come now." 3 days later, I stood in my new apartment in Riverside, surrounded by boxes and the furniture I had claimed from my parents' house. The place was small but modern, with large windows that flooded the space with natural light. Most importantly, it was mine. No one could make me feel guilty for having it. I had signed the final house sale papers that morning. The new owner would take possession in 30 days, giving my parents time to find alternative housing. Their portion of the proceeds, deposited into a new account only they could access, would easily allow them to purchase a smaller place or rent comfortably for years. My phone had been inundated with calls and messages since they'd presumably returned home and received my letter. I hadn't answered any of them. Martin, my lawyer, called to inform me they had contacted him, alternating between threats of legal action and pleas for reconciliation. "They have no legal grounds to contest the sale," he assured me. "Everything was done properly. As for reconciliation, that's entirely up to you." I wasn't ready for that conversation. Perhaps I never would be. The depth of their deception had destroyed my trust completely. Instead, I focused on preparing for my new job. I organized my portfolio, refreshed my knowledge of current design software, and researched Ashton Partners' recent projects. For the first time in years, I was thinking about architecture more than family drama. The first day at the firm was both terrifying and exhilarating. Helen greeted me warmly, introducing me to the team of 12 architects and designers, who would now be my colleagues. "Everyone, this is Amanda Bennett, our new project coordinator," she announced. "She brings valuable construction experience along with her architectural background. I expect her practical knowledge will be especially useful for the Westview development project." Throughout the day, I was briefed on ongoing projects, given access to the firm's systems, and shown my workspace, a real desk in a professional office, not a converted attic. My colleagues were curious about my unusual career path, but I offered only vague explanations about family obligations that had kept me in construction rather than architecture. "Well, we're glad you've joined us now," said David, the senior architect who would be my immediate supervisor. "Your construction experience is actually a huge asset. Too many architects design without understanding building realities." By the end of that first day, I felt a mixture of exhaustion and satisfaction. Walking to my car, I checked my phone to find 3 more missed calls from my parents, and surprisingly, a text from an unknown number. "Amanda, it's Jake. We need to talk. Parents told me what happened." I almost deleted it immediately, but curiosity won out. After 6 years of no contact, what could my brother possibly have to say? I texted back a single line. "What did they tell you?" His response came quickly. "That you sold the house without warning and abandoned them. That you're having some kind of breakdown." Of course they would spin it that way. I wasn't surprised, just disappointed. "Ask them about the phone call they didn't hang up properly," I replied. "Ask them why they told me they hadn't seen you in years while they were visiting you monthly." There was a long pause before his next message. "What are you talking about?" I debated sending him the recording, but decided against it. "This isn't a text conversation. If you want the truth, meet me in person." We arranged to meet that weekend at a coffee shop halfway between Riverside and his home in Colorado. I wasn't sure what I hoped to accomplish, but after years of being manipulated, I wanted at least one family member to hear my side of the story. The meeting was tense. Jake looked older than his 38 years, with threads of gray in his dark hair and lines around his eyes I didn't remember. He arrived angry, clearly having accepted our parents' version of events. "How could you do this to them?" he demanded before even sitting down. "After everything they've done for you." I laughed, a short, bitter sound that made him frown. "What exactly do you think they've done for me, Jake?" "They gave you a place to live when you couldn't make it in Chicago," he said with absolute conviction. "They've been supporting you while you figured out your career." My jaw actually dropped. "Is that what they told you?" "It's what happened," he insisted. "They said, 'You've been struggling since college, couldn't find architectural work, so they let you stay with them.'" Without a word, I pulled out my phone, opened a recording app, and played the conversation I'd overheard. Jake's expression changed from anger to confusion to shock as our parents' voices discussed me as a burden while praising him. When it finished, he sat back looking stunned. "That can't be right." "Here are the financial records," I said, sliding a folder across the table. 6 years of me paying every bill in that house. 6 years of supporting them after I gave up a job at Braddock and Associates to save them from the financial disaster you helped create. Braddock and Associates, the Chicago firm. He seemed genuinely confused. "They told me you couldn't find work after graduation." "I had a job offer. I gave it up when they called saying they were facing bankruptcy and foreclosure because of medical bills and loans you took out." Jake shook his head. "I never took out loans in their names. I borrowed money from them for my business, yes, but it was their money to give, and I paid it back years ago." Now it was my turn to be confused. "Paid it back? They said you disappeared after taking loans using the house as collateral." "That's insane. I've never missed our monthly calls. I've seen them every month for the past 4 years. I send them checks quarterly from my business profits." We stared at each other, both beginning to realize the extent of our parents' manipulations. They had played us against each other, telling each of us a completely different story, ensuring we remained separate and never compared notes. Over the next 2 hours, Jake and I reconstructed the truth from our combined experiences. Our parents had exaggerated their financial troubles to keep me supporting them, while simultaneously telling Jake I was the one being supported. They had manufactured emergencies whenever either of us seemed to be creating too much independence. They had systematically isolated us from each other to maintain their control. "I can't believe I fell for it," Jake said finally. "But why? Why go to such lengths to manipulate us?" "Control," I suggested. "Or maybe they couldn't stand the idea of us having successful lives apart from them." Jake nodded slowly. "I remember Dad always said family businesses fail when children pursue their own interests instead of carrying on traditions. Maybe this was their way of punishing us for wanting different lives." "Whatever the reason, it stops now," I said firmly. "I'm not going back to that dynamic." "Neither am I," Jake agreed. "But what now? They're still our parents." We left the coffee shop with no clear answers, but a tentative truce between us. Jake promised to stop enabling their manipulations, and I agreed to consider limited contact in the future after I'd had time to heal. In the weeks that followed, I immersed myself in my new job and apartment. I decorated with items I'd always wanted but never felt entitled to buy. I joined a local architects association and began attending their monthly meetings. I reconnected with university colleagues through professional networking sites. Slowly, I reclaimed the identity I'd suppressed for 6 years. My parents continued attempting contact. The tone of their messages shifted from outrage to guilt-tripping to occasional genuine seeming remorse. I maintained my boundary, directing all communication through Martin. Eventually, they found a condo they could afford with their portion of the house proceeds and moved out before the new owner took possession. 6 months after I left, I received a letter from my mother. Unlike the frantic messages before, this one was thoughtful and subdued. Amanda, I won't ask for forgiveness because I'm not sure we deserve it. What your father and I did was wrong. We took advantage of your loyalty and kindness. We convinced ourselves we were entitled to your support because we were your parents. But parents should lift their children up, not hold them back. I can't undo the years you lost, but I want you to know I recognize the harm we caused. Your father isn't ready to admit this yet, but perhaps someday. I hope you're finding happiness in your new life. If you ever want to talk, I'm here, but I understand if that never happens. Love, Mom. I read the letter several times, searching for manipulation between the lines. While not a full apology, it was the first acknowledgement of wrongdoing I'd received. I didn't respond immediately, but I saved the letter rather than throwing it away. Jake and I maintained cautious contact, comparing notes whenever our parents reached out to ensure we were getting the same story. Rebuilding trust with him was complicated, but there was something healing about reconnecting with the only person who truly understood the family dynamics we'd grown up with. A year after I left Mapleton, Zoe suggested meeting for Thanksgiving at a neutral location, her new house in Michigan. She extended invitations to Jake, his girlfriend, and after much discussion, our parents. You can always change your mind, she assured me, but sometimes neutral ground makes these conversations possible. I agreed tentatively, knowing I could cancel if it felt too overwhelming. When the day came, I drove to Zoe's house with nervous anticipation. Everyone had agreed to come, including our parents, whom I hadn't seen since the day they left for what I'd known was their secret visit to Jake. The reunion was awkward, but civil. Mom had clearly prepared Dad for appropriate behavior as he was subdued and avoided the passive-aggressive comments that had once been his specialty. We ate Zoe's beautiful dinner, making careful conversation about neutral topics. After dessert, Jake suggested a walk, and our parents declined, giving us siblings space to talk. Do you think they've changed? He asked as we strolled through Zoe's neighborhood. I think Mom wants to, I said cautiously. Dad seems to be following her lead, but old patterns are hard to break. True, but so is complete estrangement. He looked at me thoughtfully. I'm not saying go back to how things were, just that maybe limited, carefully boundaried contact might be possible eventually. I nodded. Maybe. On my terms this time. When we returned, Mom was helping Zoe with dishes, while Dad sat uncomfortably in the living room. I sat across from him, meeting his eyes directly. I don't regret what I did, I said quietly, but I am sorry it came to that. He nodded slowly. Your mother says we drove you to it, that we took advantage. It wasn't quite an apology, but it was an acknowledgement. For now, that was enough. As we prepared to leave, Mom hugged me tentatively. Your firm's project was featured in Architectural Digest, she said, the community center in Riverside. I recognized your style in some of the interior elements. I was surprised she'd noticed. Yes, that was my first major contribution. It's beautiful, Amanda. You were always meant to create spaces like that. Her words, simple but genuine, touched something I'd thought long dead. Not forgiveness exactly, but perhaps the first tentative step toward a different kind of relationship, one based on truth, rather than manipulation with boundaries I controlled. Looking back now on the 1-year anniversary of leaving my parents' house, I can hardly believe how much has changed. My office at Ashton Partners is filled with project blueprints and design awards. My apartment feels truly like home. I've started dating again, nothing serious yet, but it's nice to remember I'm more than just someone's dutiful daughter. The healing process hasn't been linear. Some days I still feel angry about the lost years and opportunities. Other days, I recognize that my unique path gave me perspectives and skills I might have missed in a more traditional career trajectory. My combined experience in construction and design has made me valuable at the firm in ways I couldn't have predicted. Therapy has been essential. Dr. Marshall has helped me understand the patterns of manipulation I grew up with and why I was vulnerable to them for so long. We've worked on establishing healthy boundaries not just with my parents, but in all relationships. I'm learning to recognize when my people-pleasing tendencies are being triggered and to pause before automatically sacrificing my own needs. My relationship with my parents remains complicated. We exchange occasional texts and have spoken on the phone a few times. I visited them once, meeting at a restaurant rather than their new condo, to maintain neutral territory. These interactions are carefully boundaried. I don't discuss my finances with them, and I end conversations at the first sign of guilt tripping or manipulation. Jake and I text regularly now. The shared experience of uncovering our parents' manipulations created a bond neither of us expected. Last month, he invited me to Colorado to see his landscaping business, which is genuinely successful. Watching him show me around his nursery with evident pride, I felt a pang of regret for the years we lost as siblings. I wish we'd compared notes sooner. I told him over dinner that evening. Me too, he admitted. But they were experts at keeping us isolated from each other. The most profound change has been internal. I no longer measure my worth by how much I sacrifice for others. I've learned that healthy relationships involve mutual support and respect, not one person constantly giving while the other takes. I've built a circle of friends in Riverside who know my story and help me maintain perspective when old doubts creep in. Zoe remains my rock. "I told you so" has never passed her lips, though she'd be entitled. Instead, she celebrated each step of my journey toward independence and healing. When I received my first design award 6 months into my new job, she drove 3 hours to attend the ceremony. "This is who you were always meant to be," she whispered as we hugged afterward. "The work I'm doing now fulfills me in ways I'd almost forgotten were possible." Last week, we broke ground on a community arts center. I designed my first solo project with the firm. Standing at the construction site, watching the foundation being prepared, I felt a sense of purpose and rightness that had been missing for years. I don't know what the future holds for my relationship with my parents. True reconciliation would require deeper acknowledgement and change on their part than I've seen so far. But I've learned that family can be chosen as well as born. The friends who supported me through this journey have become my family of choice. If you're watching this and recognizing your own situation in mine, please know you're not alone. Financial manipulation and emotional exploitation within families are more common than we discuss openly. It's never too late to reclaim your life and set boundaries. The people who truly love you will respect those boundaries even when they're uncomfortable. Have you ever had to set difficult boundaries with family members? Share your experience in the comments below. I read every comment and find strength in our shared stories. If this resonated with you, please like this video and subscribe for more content about healing from family trauma. Remember, it's never too late to begin writing a new chapter of your story. Thank you for listening to mine.